What has it been like for you to teach different student populations?
I think it's like the greatest challenge and joy of teaching, I think. I have students who, so to my mind, it's not different teaching students with Jewish background to students without Jewish background. Sometimes a Hebrew school education gets in the way of an academic Jewish education because there's a narrative in Hebrew school. We have very strong Chabad on campus. There's a narrative from Chabad, which really is not the same as the narrative of most Jewish historians of the Jews, that is to say.
Maybe you should mention what campus you're at.
Sure, I am at Western Washington University in Bellingham, Washington. And most of our students are local, Washington, Oregon, Idaho. And, so some, people, a lot of times students think Jewish history is very sad. That's something Jewish students or people who, students who've come in and kind of self-identified as Jewish seem to think. Other students also seem to think that, or that it's mainly about the Holocaust. That is I think, common conception about Jewish history. Washington State mandates some Holocaust education, which I think is great, but when Holocaust education is the only thing you know about the Jews, then that's a problem. And I think that, something I try to tell my students is that, first of all students come in with some sort of background, right? Either some academic background, maybe they took a lot of European history, so they can kind of slot in what they learn in my class into that, and that's great. Like, to come with a schema that you can already work with is wonderful. And then, but sometimes students will come in and say, well, I'm not Jewish, so I don't really know, but. And it's always a challenge, I think, that you have to interrupt that and say, look, like, this is not necessarily relevant. Like, whether you're Jewish or not, none of us in this class are a Jew in Spain in 1491, right? No one can speak to that experience. And so that's something I think that needs to be emphasized and re-emphasized all the time. But students take my class, who don't have Jewish background for a variety of reasons. Sometimes they've just learned that they had like a Jewish relative and they never knew, and now they're super curious about their family, and that's great. One student, I've had students in my class who have like relatives, distant ancestors who are members of the Nazi Party, and they're interested from that angle, right? And so I think, like with all humanities subjects, we come at them from such different angles that it's not about student identity. But sometimes that can be hard. I mean, I think some students really come in and say, like, oh, I won't be good in this class because I'm not Jewish, or I don't know Hebrew, or I had a Jewish education, but it was really weak, and in this class I'm trying to make up for that, and I'm sorry. And I think that's, when a student comes in and like on day one starts apologizing for like who they are, who they aren't, that's something that's a real challenge. But I think when you can kind of say, like, for the class as a whole, like, we have to move beyond this narrative. Like, being born into a certain identity doesn't make you an expert. Like, research makes you an expert. And I think in this country, we're at a place where expertise doesn't matter. People don't like experts, they're elites, etc. And it's, I think, so to understand like what is expertise and like where it comes from, and that it doesn't come from some weird concept of blood is so important.